Hey there, it's Nick Terzo, and this is the Radical Podcast. No, we won't be overthrowing any governments, but we will be learning from radical creatives who rule the world. Hey folks, we have a great show for you today. My guest is Joe the Butcher Nicolo. Joe has had an outstanding career as a multi-Grammy winning producer, but is also best known for founding one of the seminal independent record labels, Ruffhouse, located in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. Ruffhouse's artist roster has included Cypress Hill, the Fugees, Lauryn Hill, Wyclef Jean, Praz, and Criss Cross. His label would go on to sell over 100 million records. And folks, I said records, not streams. As a producer, Joe has worked with such artists as Billy Joel, DJ Jazzy Jeff, Will Smith, Bob Dylan, Aerosmith, and the Rolling Stones. And if that's not enough, he also tried his hand as a film producer, producing films such as Shade with Jamie Foxx and Sylvester Stallone, and Just Add Water with Danny DeVito and Jonah Hill. Joe has been honored by the Grammys with its Heroes Award and was inducted in the Philadelphia Walk of Fame. This is a good one. Next up, my conversation with the Butcher, Joe Nicolo. Hey, Joe Nicolo.
Hey, Nick, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you today?
I am living the dream by the skin of my teeth.
Oh.
But just barely.
Well, I think there's a large group of citizens living that way currently.
Well, we're going to get through it, and music helps soothe the savage beast, and this too shall pass. So it's and we don't really have much of a choice, do we?
No, we don't. Well, thank you for doing this with me. I mean, you been a very good friend over the years and a little bit of a mentor. So I'm kind of excited to have this conversation.
Well, I am excited too, man. It's just, it's been way too long, dude. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Indeed, indeed. So tell me a little bit. Are you a native Philadelphian or Pennsylvanian?
I am a native suburbs of Philadelphia. I grew up in Wayne, Pennsylvania, which is a few blocks from what was the Devon Horse Show, which I think is still the Devon Horse Show, with my twin brother, Phil. I think they call that the main line, but our house was the size of a postage stamp, and we slept in the same slept in the same bedroom. And but it was good. I mean, I had a good childhood. My dad was a butcher. That's where he was Joe the Butcher Senior. So that's why I'm one of the reasons why I'm Joe the Butcher Junior. And it was good. It was just me and my twin brother. So that was enough for my parents. Just us two.
Nice. Yeah, I was curious on your actual working nickname, if it was from your dad or from just the fact that you were such a great tape splicer in the early days.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. In the middle 80s, I did a record called Fantasy Machines with Ray Monahan, who has since passed away. And Ray said, you should call yourself something. You should have a handle. Why not Joe the Butcher? Because you butcher tape. You slice tape up. And I said, that'd be perfect, because my dad was Joe the Butcher. As a matter of fact, he had a butcher shop in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, which is exactly where Studio 4, the studio that me and my brother opened in 1980, is. So I was Joe the Butcher Jr. in Conshohocken. So it was kind of cool.
That's awesome. And your brother is actually a twin brother, right?
Yes, my brother Phil is Phil. He's who's also in the music business. He still operates Studio 4 with Will Yip, who's quite a prominent, I guess it's punk pop producer. He did Code Orange as and a bunch of other records in that genre. So Studio 4 is still there, still in Conshohocken.
That's awesome. Did you guys play as kids together? I mean, musically? I mean, did you guys do any band stuff, or were more interested on the kind of engineering or kind of the technical side initially?
Yeah, we were always on the technical side. We got our first recordio, our first tape recorder, when we were in third grade, and on that we got it on the boardwalk in Wildwood, New Jersey, and in one of those where they rip you off shops,
Right.
and we. That brought us through to eighth grade, where we got our first tape deck, and we actually set up a studio in our parents' attic, and we would record kids in the attic, and that's how we started.
Wow. Talk about kind of knowing your direction at an early age.
This has been, it's like this is all I ever wanted to do, and I'm lucky because I mean it's of course it's great when your passion and your vocation and what you can do for a living all coincide in the perfect storm. But it's like I really can't do anything else very well. But I have to say, man, I do this really well. So at least it was all my eggs in the same basket. So I was blessed for that.
Right. Well, I think there's other things you do well, which we'll get to later on here as we speak. So did you go on to kind of any kind of technical school to learn the engineering side, or is this just all by working at studios?
Actually, a little bit of both. I went to Temple University, graduated for RTF, radio, television, and film, and I graduated in '77 with a degree in RTF. But you send your resumes around, and it was just like there was no jobs to be had. So we opened our own studio, actually in Wayne, called Half Track, and got to know a Philly engineer by the name of Obie O'Brien and Lance Quinn. And Lance was Tony Bon Jovi's partner in the Power Station, which is now the Power Station again. It's probably it's an infamous recording studio in New York. I remember, and me and my brother would go and sleep on the floor there and intern at the Power Station. And I remember one time where Bruce Springsteen was recording Nebraska in the A room, Chic was recording in the B room, and David Bowie was recording Scary Monsters in the C room. So that's the kind of clientele they had. And Tony and Larry Alexander and Neil Dorsman, Bob Clearmountain, I mean, they were the Jedi masters, including Tony Bon Jovi. And they taught us how to engineer. Tony was an amazing studio designer. He designed Studio 4. And as a matter of fact, I'm sitting in my own home studio, which this is the first recording that I've made in my new studio, which Tony Bon Jovi actually helped me to design. So that's why we had a couple of glitches to start, but I think we're on our way here. I finally got this microphone to work.
That's awesome. I didn't know that history with Tony, though. That's awesome. Was there, because of like Gamble and Huff and all that stuff, like in the 70s and stuff, I mean, were there studios? I mean, was there a scene around Philadelphia? I mean, it had to be around them, so to speak.
The studio in Philadelphia at the time was Sigma Sound, and they did all the Philly international stuff. As a matter of fact, David Bowie recorded, was it Diamond? Young Americans, I think, was recorded at Sigma Sound in Philly. And then there were a couple of other offshoot studios like right outside of Philly, but we were in Center City. We moved to Center City in 1980 as Studio 4, and we were in Center City until like 1995. So those Sigma and us were the two studios in Philly. Sigma, of course, was known for the Gamble and Huff, the Philly International, the OJ's, Spinners, Teddy Pendergrass. We were known more. We had more of a rock and roll band. I mean, we eventually recorded the Hooters and Robert Hazard, but then it was in the early 80s, I'd say 83, 84, where I started recording this. It was funny because I was kind of the low man on the totem pole as far as the engineers were concerned at that time. And it was like, well, so I was relegated to record the sessions that no one else really wanted to record. And at that moment, it happened to be rap music. So I became the rap music guy in Philly. And it brought, I mean, it started with Schoolie D, with Gucci Time, PSK, and then I did 3 Times Dope and Steady B and Cool C and Cash Money and Tough Crew, and they became, you know, the standards that were of rap music that was coming out of Philadelphia. So you know, I really owe everybody a debt of gratitude for, you know, me being the guy who had to clean up the rap scraps because it established me as Joe the Butcher.
Right. And at that time, were those artists signed to just independent labels, or were they signed to major labels? I mean, who was funding these recordings?
They were all, well, at first Schoolie was independent. But then, you know, he started blowing up in Philly, and then Jive Records saw what was happening in Philly. Fortunately, I was able to record and discover Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince with Lawrence and Dana Goodman, and then so once that happened in Schoolie D, I started working really for Jive almost exclusively with the rap stuff, because Steady B. Steady B and 3 Times, well, actually 3 Times Dope was on Arista. So at that point they became major records. Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince was also on Jive. Steady B was on Jive. Schoolie was on Jive, and then I guess Cash Money was on Sleeping Bag. So they were all major label records.
And was your role more engineer, or was it actually producing those early records?
It was a combination of both. I mean, those records were made. I mean, usually the producer of those records was kind of the guy who came up with the music, with the rhythm track, and you know, depending on the act, I had some records I had more of a production hand in than not, and a lot of those records came together in the mixing aspect in terms of what you brought in and out, because you pretty much laid everything down all at the same time, and then you brought things in and out as you made the record, kind of on the fly as you mixed the stuff.
Right. Well, that's a real interesting time and kind of a revolution in music, right? And there you were, kind of sitting right on it. I don't know if you knew it or not, but you were.
I didn't know it at the time. I think what was so gratifying and refreshing about rap at that time was there were no rules. You could pretty much do anything you want if it felt good. You could put reverb on the kick drum, enormous reverb on kick drums. You could do, you know, there was just, the vocal could just be straight up grimy, scratchy, in your face vocals. It didn't, you know, it was just a certain, it was all about attitude, and it just came through those recordings, which, I mean, it still does today. I mean, you know, like anything, you know, there's classic records back then, and then there's records that are just downright corny, but it was just a great time to be part of the early evolution of rap.
Right. And so that set up the studio with Studio 4 then is kind of a contender after doing those records.
Yes. It all happened about at the same time, because Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, like, it's funny that the first gold record that I ever got was for the first Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince record, which was Rock the House. And then at the very same time, the first gold record my brother ever got was the Hooters' Nervous Night. So, and that's like middle 80s-ish. So, you know, that it was funny. We were kind of hitting on all cylinders at that point on different genres of music, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, I'd say. And how did you, so you're at Studio 4, how did you make kind of this leap or simultaneously become like a staff producer at Columbia Records then?
Well, what happened was in right after Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince won the first rap Grammy for He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper, which I got totally screwed on in terms of credits, but we won't go into that because it's not worth talking about, and I just mentioned it.
You're on record.
Oh, okay. So I got totally screwed. Thanks, Ann Carly. I mean, well, it's okay. It's a long story. Brian Chucky, they wanted Brian Chucky New to be the rap god at Jive. So like all the shit that I did for that record, Brian Chucky New got credit for. And you can tell I don't feel, there's no animosity. I don't even mind, as you can tell by my voice, that I don't, this doesn't, 37 years later, it doesn't bother me at all. Not at all. So anyway, but moving on, I digress. I still got, I still got credit for the Grammy, so screw it.
Nothing like a good rap battle. So.
Where is Brian Chucky New today? That's what I want to know. He's probably living at Shenandoah. But anyway, hey man, I got nothing against Brian Chucky New. I'm just kidding. I don't want you to, it's just, he's an excellent English guy. I'm just kidding. But anyway.
Okay. So on to Columbia Records.
So now I'll fast forward real quick because we started Ruffhouse. We actually got our first distribution deal through the Hine brothers at Enigma. They had
I know those guys.
They had Striper, that Poison Striper, but they didn't have any rap. So we brought Ruffhouse there first. The record, I can't say whether the records weren't great or the promotion was not on, but it just, things weren't happening at Enigma. So, but at the same time, Rick Chertoff was recording he was producing, I guess it was the second Hooters record at Studio 4 with my brother and John and Yellow. And Rick had just come off of the tremendous success with Cyndi Lauper. And so he said, I'm going to become head of A&R at Columbia, and Donnie Einer's going to be taking over as president. Why don't you come over there with me? You could be like my first signing as a label. So we did. That was 1989. And the first two things that Rick and Donnie signed was Ruffhouse Records and Alice in Chains in 1989.
Yep.
And that started the run at Ruffhouse at Columbia Records.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Rick Chertoff, a very nice and talented man for sure. So I didn't put together that kind of Hooters connection there.
Yeah, because that's how I got to know Rick, is because he was at Studio 4 every day, and he saw what me and Chris were doing and thought, I don't know, man, these guys seem to have something going on here. So he brought us into Columbia.
Right. So when I got to Columbia, I was obviously concentrating on my first signings, but later on into it, I was like, I got to be involved with these Ruffhouse guys. So I was like begging them, like, please.
What was your first signing?
Alice in Chains.
Oh, that was your signing.
Yeah.
Oh shit. So because I remember
Toad the Wet Sprocket and Alice in Chains.
Oh, okay, because I remember being in Donnie's office. You must have been there when we got signed, because I thought we were both in the same room together. Of course, it's been 237 years, but I could have sworn that we were in the same room together at that point. And of course, I remember seeing you after that. But that's funny, man. Okay, that's awesome.
But I was in LA at the time, so it's probably. I wasn't really in the New York office at that time. So.
Okay, so that's
so
why.
Anyway, so you make the deal at Columbia. It's I suppose some kind of a joint venture. And who did you first sign and record?
The first act we recorded for Columbia and Columbia was an artist by the name of Chiba, who was actually from L.A., and we did a song called "The Piper," which to this day I still really, really like. He was part of the Digital Underground crew, and that was our first charting record actually at Columbia. That record actually did chart, and it was, like I said, it was called "The Piper." It was jazz influence. So if you go on YouTube and look up the video, it's a pretty cool song. I think it still holds up.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I don't remember that. So, and then you went on to sign a lot of you were kind of on a roll, man. You guys are batting 1,000 after that, weren't you?
It was pretty incredible. We did sign a Philly rapper. His name was Larry Lahr, which he was part of the 3 Times Dub crew, and that didn't quite translate to many record sales. But then our first number 1 rap single was Tim Dog, "Fuck Compton." I mean, I'm from the South Bronx. Fuck Compton. I mean, it's just kind of I look back on that, man. I'm sure glad those West Coast rebels didn't put a cap in my ass, because it was freaking brutal. So if you have a second, you want to check out. You want to check out a diss as big as professional wrestling, let's check out "Fuck Compton." And then right out of that, we signed Cypress Hill, and that was 90. And the Cypress Hill, the first Cypress Hill record is still one of my favorite records that I've ever been involved with. It was so different. For me, it was kind of revolutionary, and there was a certain marriage of East Coast and West Coast on that first record that was undeniable. And it's funny because the Black Sunday, the second Cypress record, a lot of the songs on that record we recorded while making the first record, because we were really on a roll, and we decided, no, let's not stop, let's just keep making records. And a lot of that record was recorded while we were making the first record. And then that, Insane in the Membrane, of course, that
forget about it.
That was through the roof. That record, that album entered at number 1, and I'm surprised that Cypress never won a Grammy, because they really should have, in terms of their innovation. I stay in contact with those guys to this day.
Yeah, their contribution hasn't really been acknowledged that way, anyway.
No, the latest album, Elephants on Acid, which Muggs was a part of. A major part of was, it's one of the best comeback records that they've had. It's been a minute, but anyway, they're still just great guys, and like you say, their contribution was undeniable.
Undeniable.
And then through 90, 91, all of a sudden there came this kid by the name of Jermaine Dupri, who I got introduced to Jermaine Dupri through. It's funny because I got introduced to Jermaine through Mio Vukovic, who is now at Disney, and Jeff Fenster, who was at Warner. I'm not sure where Jeff is today, but make a long story short, they introduced me to Muggs and Jermaine Dupri. Muggs was in a band called the 7A3 before Cypress, which evolved into Cypress Hill. And I was in LA doing a record for Mellow Man Ace called Mentarosa, which was also a gold record. And Mellow Man said, "You got to check my brother's band, Senin, Cypress Hill." And it's like, and Muggs was in Cypress Hill. So that's how the Cypress Hill thing happened. But so Neo introduced me to Jermaine Dupri, and I did this record for Geffen with this girl rap group called they were called Silk Times Leather. And we were making the Silk Times Leather record, and we were at the Underground in Atlanta, and there were these two kids, like dressed, just really dressed with they just looked like they were stars. They just looked like they had something. And we thought they were part of this band ABC, another band, Creation, at the time. So it was like, were you guys associated with ABC? And they were like, no. And we said, well, do you guys rap? And they said, no. And it's like, do you guys want to rap? And they were like, yeah. And Jermaine is like, we're gonna totally cross out your dress. We're going to make you dress backwards, and we're going to call you Crisscross. And so we recorded an EP, the little Boys in the Hood. Anyway, so it was an EP that was done. And I guess it was David Kahn, who was the head of A&R at the time. He was like, well, maybe we should turn this into an album. Why don't you guys record a couple of more songs, and we'll put out an album. And we recorded Jump and Warm It Up, Chris, as the last two songs of that record. And, of course, Jump is still probably the biggest single that Ruffhouse ever had. I think it's still probably in the top 40 biggest selling pop singles of all time, I would think. Still to this
they were
day.
like the BTS of their time. I mean, that song just was incredible.
I mean, and it all happened. They were on in living color, which I still have a copy of. I have video copies of every video we ever shot. I've got Crisscross on living color. I've got the infamous Cypress Hill on Saturday Night Live when Muggs lit a joint on stage. And I'll never forget it, man. Donnie, the president of Columbia, I'll just digress for 1 second, slipping over. But man, when that happened, Donnie flipped the fuck out. And he man, I've never seen him that mad. And Cypress was banned from Saturday Night Live forever for smoking a joint on stage. I think he'd probably get away with it today, but not back then.
No way. So what did that end up selling, like the Crisscross thing? I mean, like, what did the single alone sell, let alone the album? Do you know?
Let me look. I got these plaques back here somewhere. I think the single probably did 8 million copies worldwide. The album, it's funny because the Fugees score and Lauryn Hill album-wise, it eclipsed what the Crisscross record did, but it did close to 10 million worldwide, the album, and the single I think did between 6 and 8 million at the time.
That's a nice little label down there in Pennsylvania, pushing this stuff out.
Yeah, we were making some noise, and we were like the rap label. I forget what. I guess it was the year. Wow, it's probably the Fugees Killing Me Softly year. We were the number one rap label in Billboard that year. But
how did you beat them? Like, how did that signing come about?
The head of our street team. We were one of the first labels to have what we called a street team, and it was headed by Rose Mann, which you probably remember. And what we would have was we had different kids in each city who would they'd put snipes up for us, they put banners up, they would have their ears to the street, and they would talk up our records, and they were called our street team. And one of the guys from the street team in East Orange, New Jersey, said there's this band Translator, the Fugees Translator crew, and they got a cassette to Rose. We thought it was really cool. So what we didn't know is that every major label had passed on the Fugees at the time. But we thought, this sounds cool. So it was me, David Kahn, and Chris Schwartz, my partner in Ruffhouse, went up to David Sonnenberg's office. David Sonnenberg, big famous manager. He managed Nas. He managed, well, of course, he managed. It doesn't matter. But at the time he had managed Nas. I think he managed. I forget now. So he was a big manager. So we went to his office, and the Fugees performed in his office. And by the end of the performance, Wyclef was in his underwear, standing on a Fender Champ amplifier with sweat dripping off of his nose. And we just both, all of us sat there. It was me in the center, David Kahn on one side, and Chris on the other side. And Chris was like, "This is fucking amazing, man. This is great." David Kahn said, I'm in. And I sat there with my arms crossed, and I went, I don't like it. I said, I don't like it. And there was this pregnant pause. I said, I love it. and Clef still tells that story of like, he's like, man, when you said I don't like it, it's like, I thought you were such a fucking asshole, but I respected to my face. You just said, I don't like it, but of course that was not the case. And we signed the Fugees, and Blunted on Reality, I guess, was the name of the first album. And really, first single was Boof Buff, which really didn't do anything. So we dropped. I don't remember what the single was after that. But then at the very tail end of that record, we dropped Nappy Heads, and we did some remixes on Nappy Heads, and it started to get a little bit of a buzz, just a little bit of a buzz. So we sold about 113,000 records at that point. And back then, 113,000 records for Donnie and Tommy Mottola was just like, oh, that ain't shit. So Donnie said, you're not going to be signing the Fugees, are you? Are you going to stay with the Fugees? And we were like, fuck yeah, man, this is still starting to happen. So since our deal was cross-collateralized, it's like, well, you're spending your own money. I mean, if it doesn't happen, it's going to come out of your pocket. So we made the second record, which of course was The Score. And it had this song on there, this remake. What was that called? Killing Me Softly.
Yep.
And there you go, millions of singles again. And that album, I think, did 14 million copies worldwide. 14 million copies.
Wow.
And I remember, like, when Clef first played me Killing Me Softly, like, he played it, and it's like, I'm sure you know the song, of course. It's just a beat. Lauren is singing, the bass comes in the chorus, and then in the second verse, everything drops out again except the beat. And I'm like, I'm thinking like from an A&R radio standpoint, you wanted to have something that was going to work at pop radio. And I said to Clef, you got to bring something else in the second verse, man. It's just the bottom end drops out, and you just got the beat with Lauren. You got to stick something there. And he was like, nah, man, mm-mm. I'm like, come on, man, you got to put, he's like, nah, man, mm-mm. And that's when you realize the artist always knows best of what to do. And that record, that you listen to that second verse and it's just the beat, but it's just like Lauren is singing like a freaking angel. And the rest is history with that record.
Yeah, that's incredible. Dude, it's like, because normally if I spoke to someone about starting their label, normally it would be like, well, gee, how did you get through the hard times? I mean, you guys got into the fast lane really quick. I don't have to ask that question. So
no, it's trying to get back into the it's like, how do I get this car back on the fast lane? It's just like, but you know what, man, you just don't know. You can't. You just make records that you feel passionate about. Right. That you're like, I really, 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 really like this, and you hope other people like it too. you know.
And what were the challenges for you? I mean, as you balance kind of being more on the creative side in the studio versus kind of an entrepreneur, and I've got this label that's kind of a business too. And I know Chris was your partner and kind of handled some of that side. But what was that pressure like for you, and how did you balance like your time?
We would like we'd go to New York every 2 weeks. We would spend 2 days in New York, and so you know there was a little bit of both. But I have to say, you know, I was really fortunate that Chris, you know, let me stay in the kitchen with the acts, and I was, you know, somewhat insulated from the you know, from the business aspect. And again, when things are popping, you know, it's all pretty good. It's just when the lean times happen, and you know, I don't remember ever having, in the 10, 11 years that we were at Columbia, I just don't remember ever having a time where, you know, the bean counters up at Sony are kind of pissed, man. You know, you got to, you know, spill some blood on this baby, because, you know, it's been a little bit dry. You know, you've been 0 for 7, and, you know, you haven't had a couple of home runs in a couple of games, because then after the Fugees, then there was Wyclef Carnival. That was a double platinum record. Praz, Guantanamo. No, it was not Guantanamo. It was Praz. He had a gold single, and then of course there was Lauryn Hill. 5 Grammys. So it was, you know, there was pressure, but I, you know, at the time it was just trying to hold on with both hands on the roller coaster ride. You know, it was right. Just, you don't, you know, at the time you're just, you know, because there was Cypress, there was, you know, there was Crisscross, there was the Fugees, you know, and the people don't realize Crisscross had 3 multi-platinum records. You know, they weren't a one-hit wonder. You know, it just that. And of course, tragically, Chris Kelly passed away a couple of years ago. That you know, so
yeah, but see, that's why the bean counters couldn't really touch you, because, you know, you're talking about putting a billing of like $500 million, and and they're stealing from you anyway somehow. So there was no way they were going to get on your tail.
No, and they steal from you, but you know, it was funny, man. And then this is actually true how the Tommy Mottola Donnie Einer machine worked. When we would have a huge, here's the thing, when we had a huge hit, we would go up there and ask for a lot of money, and they would counteract with a lot of money. When we never got a statement with a check at the bottom of the statement, and the statements were like, you know, just for one act that you remember was like 4 inches thick. Well, when you pile up all our statements, it was just like, you know, we would, like I said, you know, the Fugees, you know, whatever. And so when the membrane hits, we go up there and ask for a ton of money. They give us money. The Fugees hit, we ask for a ton of money. They give us a ton of money. And then with Lauryn, we had a joint venture, and they bought us out of the joint venture. So it was really a series of several huge checks. That's basically how it went.
Right. So you front loaded it a little bit, or not really front loaded it.
No, yeah, you know, it was instinctual billing, I think, is how they used to. Instinctual billing. And,
yeah, I never saw a statement either with a check. So that, just so you know, it was kind of common practice.
Yeah. And that, you know, I have no complaints in terms of, I do wish that I had kept a certain percentage of Ruffhouse. It's funny. And then after I sold Ruffhouse, when we sold Ruffhouse to Sony, I spent a couple of years at RCA with Jack Rovner and Bob Jameson because I guess Wu-Tang had left. But Nipper didn't really, Nipper just shit the bed when it came to urban rap. It just didn't work out. I'm not blaming RCA or the people who were there. I mean, you try, and we did a couple of records there, and it just didn't happen. But then that only lasted for a couple of years, and then I went into the movie business.
Yes, here's another life for you.
Oh my God. Well, that was a baptism of fire. The first movie I ever made was with Merv Griffin, believe it or not. And it was, it came out through RKO Pictures, and it starred Jamie Foxx, Sylvester Stallone, Gabriel Byrne, Tandy Newton, Stuart Townsend, Dina Merrill, Melanie Griffith.
What was that? Shade? What was it called? Shade?
Yes,
that
Shade.
movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I made that with Merv Griffin. I actually,
how did you do that? I mean, you just don't wake up one day and like, hey, I'm a film producer. I mean, what led to that happening?
I had two other partners who were in the movie business, Steve Stone and Thad Shirey, and they kind of pushed me towards the movie business. And I had been working with a couple of producers out in LA, and when you spend your own money, you can become a movie producer. That's
one way. Yeah.
Yeah. So and that was baptism of fire. But it's funny because that was like 2000, like right around 2002, 2003, and the international rights of that movie. You can see, I mean, it's on Hulu, it's on Showtime, it's around. But the international rights finally reverted back to me this past year. So around in the second round, I am finally going to recoup on that movie, which is good. What the heck, you know?
There you go. Hey, that's better than most.
Yeah, a lot of movies don't recoup. So, but and then I did another movie. I did a movie, Game 6, with Robert Downey Jr. and Michael Keaton. That was a cool movie. I did a movie called Just Add Water with Danny DeVito and Dylan Walsh and Jonah Hill. And but never had anything to pop. But that was, man, when you're producing a movie, is not like producing a record. It's like you're the foreman on a building that every day has a 3-alarm fire going somewhere. I mean, the director and the editor and the director, they're the real creative people. So it was just not a creative thing for me. So I guess 5 or 6 years ago, I decided I just want to get back and tinker and make music, make records.
Right. Yeah. You get a little too removed in the film business, the length of time just to get a project to where you can actually shoot it. And then, with the size of the crews, right? It's just like, I am just like a COO really, as a producer. So
correct. Exactly. There's no creativity to it. Where, of course, if you're producing a record, hey man, and you're producing music, you can create from nothing. You can create from nothing. So,
So go back a bit. You worked on kind of Billy Joel's last kind of studio record, right? Wasn't River of Dreams?
Correct.
Did you produce the main single, or did you work on the entire project?
I worked on three. I guess Danny Korchmar was the elected producer on that record, and Donnie and David Kahn. I guess they weren't real happy with its direction. So I was brought in, and I worked on. I kind of redid the singles, All About Soul, River of Dreams, and I guess Lullaby was the third single. So, and I was, as you said, I was a staff producer for Columbia Records for like 10 years. I was the guy who came in and, Sophie B. Hawkins and James Taylor and Aerosmith, Cyndi Lauper. I was the guy who made Jerry Blair very happy. As you know, Jerry Blair it was funny. Jerry Blair, for people out there, he was the head of radio.
Crazy energy.
So when so if Donnie wanted me to work on, the Billy Joel record, if I went in and played it for Donnie Ienner, who was the president, and he loved it, but I played it for Jerry Blair, the radio guy, and he didn't like it, I had failed. But if I went in, get something? And I'm like, yeah. So I'd throw him the cassette. He'd put it in the machine. He'd hit play. So if he was happy, I was happy because I knew he could get it played at radio. If it got played at radio, people would listen to it. If they listened to it, they bought it. And that was the most important. And hey, man, it's not brain surgery. That's how the shit worked.
Right. Yep. And so now how many, you've been nominated for a lot of Grammys. How many Grammys have you won?
9. I was nominated, I think, for 13. Of course, well, 5, of course, was for Lauryn Hill.
Right.
2, okay. James Taylor, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. 2 for the Fugees.
Yeah. Did River of Dreams win anything?
No, that was, man.
It was nomination.
That was the year when we were up against The Bodyguard and I Will Always Love You. And we knew we weren't going to, that was like one of those, it was a steamroller that was going to kick everybody's ass, which we knew. And me and Billy, we had a blue Solo cup, not a red, a blue Solo cup with scotch that we were just passing back and forth. And but I got to sit in the front row with Sting and Billy and Tony Bennett. And I'll never forget, man, that year, a lot of us do this because of, I do this because of the Beatles and Stevie Wonder, okay? I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. Yes, I'm that old. And it's like, this is what I want to do with my life. So after that, it was 1993, right? So I'm walking out, and in the lobby, it was at Radio City Music Hall, there is George Martin talking to Meatloaf. The guy, not the food. And so I'm like, I have to do this. So I walk up, Mr. Martin, hi, Joe Nicolo. I produced Billy Joel this year. I know you hear this all the time, but I have to tell you, you're my mentor. You're why I do this. And he looked down at me without missing a beat, and he said, "Could you tell me where the Rainbow Room is?" And for people, the Rainbow Room is kind of, it's where the buffet is after the Grammys, way up on the top of the building of Radio City. So it's like, I can take you. I can show you how to get there. It's just the elevator's right here. You can tell me where the Rainbow Room is. But
nice. So you were recently, you were inducted, was it the Philadelphia Music Hall of Fame, or is it a Walk of Fame or Hall of Fame?
It's the Walk. Yes, it's the Walk of Fame. It's in front of the Kimmel Center. And there's a plaque on the ground that you can step on that I'm sure people do. But it's it's a great honor. We were inducted with I think Patti LaBelle and a few other people. It's an honor. It's like Philly was that, it's that in between place. But we have an amazing music history here, and the musicians here are just, okay, you have Nashville, of course, you got New York, you got your LA cats, but the Philly guys, man, they made me look good through all the years of the records that I've made. It's like, so it was an honor. It was great.
That's incredible. Well, your contributions are great. And you definitely made that city vibrant during the run of Ruffhouse and Studio 4. What did you, what do you enjoy most? Being a producer for an entire project, or you like the mixing process? What's your thing?
Well, gosh, I really like both, but I guess mixing is my favorite because that's where a song, where you can make or break a song. I mean, that's where you put it all together, and that's kind of like additional production and mixing is so much of what I did aside from the Ruffhouse stuff. But even the Ruffhouse stuff is like, being the head of A&R for Ruffhouse, the way you can, the way you control a project is, okay, so the tracks are there. What does it need, or how do you mix it? So I was able to control the A&R aspect of a record by mixing it. So that was the key part. But I still like tracking. I still like recording things start to finish. But I think probably mixing is my favorite.
Nice. Yeah. What are you listening to right now? Is there anything that you're loving? I mean, that you were involved with, or just hearing that you'd really like?
I'm right now. I'm working with a couple of acts. Two acts in Philly in particular is this band Johnny Showcase, and another band called Ooh La La that I've been working with. But actually, of course, the coronavirus has put us into freaking suspended animation, unfortunately. But I've started a foundation with Tony Luke Jr. If you're from Philly, you know who Tony Luke is. He's the cheesesteak king of Philadelphia, Tony Luke. And actually, you can buy his cheesesteaks in the frozen food section of your favorite market. But so he's had this. He's kind of like the cheesesteak king. He's also on QVC. He's a chef, and unfortunately, several years ago, his son passed away from a heroin overdose, and it affected him dramatically. And he used to be Tony Lucedonio, who I knew way back and would write songs for Atlantic. And to make a long story short, we started making music, and it really helped him get through that hard time. And we decided to start a foundation, which we've called the Sound Mind Network. Basically, it's our mission statement is to change the way people look, how the world looks at addiction and mental illness. And we really just started getting it together. I've reached out to a bunch of people, to Sophie B. Hawkins, to Cyndi Lauper, to Billy Joel, and I'm either retooling songs that we did or creating new songs, which basically it's an awareness factor. We'll have a website where people who are traumatized, suicidal, have addiction problems, that's basically what we're tooling it up. We've got our foundation together. We've got our board of directors together, but the Corona thing has really stopped everything dead in its tracks. But what it did, I rehooked with Sophie B. Hawkins, and we're making a new record that I think is it's the best record that she's made since the beginning of her career. I can't say enough about this new record that we're making. So,
fantastic.
So it's keeping me busy. I love the shit on the radio. I'm not going to front. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for a good pop song. Because I still know that's what people want to hear. So it's not like, oh, the music today is garbage. Yeah. No, it's not garbage. There's garbage out there. There's always garbage out there, Yep. So.
Nope. I hear you. So listen, I'm grateful for you as a friend. I'm grateful for all you taught me when I was a young kind of A&R guy kind of coming up. And your contributions have been enormous and amazing.
Well, man, you're one of the good guys, and it's been a total pleasure to rehook up. Let's stay in touch. If everyone is screaming and yelling how I have 100 million stories, so we can always do this again, or we can
do part two.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when if you'd like, when Sophie is here, I'd love to have a little session with Sophie, and she can talk about that'd
be incredible.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Sophie. I'm hoping that Sophie and Joan Osborne do a song together. I've asked Joan And then if I get those two on the record, then I'm going to ask Cyndi Lauper. Cindy's been great. She's doing PSAs for the foundation, but I haven't asked her yet about being involved. I want to kind of do like a Three Tenors record with Sophie,
Cool.
Joan, and
Great.
yeah. So we'll see what happens.
That's great. All right, mate. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, buddy.
I will talk to you soon. See ya.
All right, man.
Well, that's our show this week. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned a little something. To follow what's going on with this podcast, you can go to theradicalpod.com. Theradicalpod.com. You'll find show notes and past episodes and even a little swag there if you want a t-shirt or a hat. Also, I would be honored if you'd subscribe at Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Till next week.